I'm Julie Garling, and these are my final reflections on my journey as an MLIS student.
Hello everyone, this is the introductory video from my YouTube presentation, which is the last requirement for my final year capstone class. In this presentation, I will describe and respond to the 8 student learning objectives, which all MLIS candidates must prove that they have learned before they graduate. Also, I will describe what I think are the strengths of the program and also discuss what I think might be one area of improvement for the program. After that, I will conclude by summarizing the presentation and also by wishing everybody the best of luck in the future, and I will see you on graduation day.
In this part of the presentation, I'm going to respond to the student learning objectives that the department laid out for its students to fulfill before they graduate. The first 2 objectives are tied together, and they are also very broad. And they require the student to assess the philosophy, principles, and ethics of the library and information field, and they also require the student to identify, evaluate, conduct, and apply current research and thought in the field of library and information studies and also in other fields. Now, after 3.5 years of classes, I can say with absolute certainty that there has not been one class that has not touched on at least one of these topics. Fact is, throughout the duration of one semester, and even one class, sometimes it's not unusual for them to touch on 2 or 3 or more. However, I feel that I have learned most about these topics in the Foundations class, in the Library Administration and Management class, and also in the Collections Management course. The 3rd and the 4th student learning objectives were the most fun for me to learn about. It requires the student to be able to apply and value user education principles in the teaching of information literacy. And they also require the student to be able to design services to meet the information needs of all users and communities. Now, my background is in multimedia arts and sciences, and a lot of students, that get into that field, a lot of times they use it to maybe in information technology, information literacy, and they do a lot of different things with that. And I always wanted to be able to use my skills to instruct people how to do things, and that was one of the reasons why I got into librarianship, is because that is such a valuable thing in libraries today. It's a very needed thing. So that the PowerPoint presentation that I did on how to use an ethnobotany database that was fun. And the last one is that when the student learns to design services to meet the information needs of all users and communities, despite my background in multimedia arts and sciences, I have to pinch myself and remember that designing services doesn't always require you to use a computer. Bibliographies are a very valuable thing for students to know how to do, because researchers still use them frequently in their work whenever they're writing articles or papers or many other things that researchers do. The next group of student learning objectives seems to have more to do with professional librarianship than student librarianship. The fifth student learning objective, the 5th SLO, requires students to engage in professional development and service, and it wants students to identify a specialization and find a professional organization that is relevant to that interest. Now, for me, I have been a member of the North Carolina Special Libraries Association for over a year now, and I have been the Charlotte area coordinator for about that length of time, which has been very enjoyable because I can put together happy hours and networking events and listen to librarians from all walks of life talk about their jobs and how they got into their field, which for me is fun. I enjoy meeting different types of people. Now, I'm also a member of the North Carolina Libraries Association, and I'm such a new member, I haven't really had a chance to find my niche in regards to a volunteer aspect of that organization, but it's only a matter of time. The 6th SLO requires students to apply appropriate technology for effective information services. And this reminds me of the last slide when I talked about how effective information services does not necessarily have to be computer-based. Bibliographies are still widely used in any field that requires a lot of research, whether that be a field of science, social science, even art. You know, you can find bibliographies at the end of articles a lot of times, especially scholarly articles, and researchers still use those a lot. Of course, there are times when computer-based technologies are very helpful. You know, I have a blog on World War II Danish freedom fighters that I love and am very proud of. I've also put together PowerPoint presentations that talked about Rene Descartes and other things. And for me, you know, using appropriate technology, you know, to for effective information services is fun. I love it. Advocacy, marketing, and communication principles are something that I'm probably the least familiar with out of all SLOs. I've had a chance to speak with Joyce Weaver during an interview, and I hear that probably most of her time, you know, in her opinion, is spent writing grants. And I also think about the budget case study that I did for a fictional high school, and I realized just how important advocacy and marketing is in the field of librarianship, especially when I think about a library in my community whose budget is teetering on the edge of a knife, and if they have even one grant taken away, one very deserving community, you know, will not have a library anymore. And that's very sad. It's a very tough time in our nation's economy, and the federal government is really making some, you know, some cuts. So some of those cuts worry me. Now, the very last SLO is where the student is required to effectively collaborate for the achievement of individual, organizational, professional, and societal goals. For me, I enjoy being around people. You know, so being able to collaborate with many different kinds of people is something that I have a lot of fun doing. I did one very large needs assessment project in my library and administration class that was done with about 4 or 5 other students, and we did the needs assessment for a small private community, well, not a community college, just a small private 4-year college in North Carolina, and I'm glad that the people in my group wound up being as good of collaborators as we were, because as huge as that project was, we'd have never gotten it done as well as we did had we not been able to work with each other very well. So I was especially proud of that project. There are a handful of things that make UNCG a very good choice in regards to a place where you can get your MLIS. Number one is affordability. It's a state-run school, so it's a lot cheaper than a private university or a private college. It's also a very well-established and well-regarded program. 95% of all the librarians that I've spoken with during my interviews for projects have come from UNCG. And it's also an established program. I spoke with someone that told me that it was the oldest in North Carolina. I haven't had a chance to verify that, but I would believe it. That sounds like that would be the truth to me. The faculty is caring and knowledgeable. I've never met one of them that was not interested in my being successful in the program and in the courses, and they've always been willing to answer questions or give me their opinion. There's also a lot of flexibility in charting your course of study. You can choose to specialize in technology, or you can specialize in cataloging. And of course, for me, I've chosen to be very well-rounded because I've wanted to be involved in a digital collections or special collections or a special library. And those particular aspects of librarianship sort of require you to be a jack of all trades. So I have intentionally been very well-rounded. Distance education is also available through UNCG, and as a Charlotte student, I have never once set foot on a Greensboro campus classroom, and I have taken nearly every class online. except for the foundations class, which was done at UNCC. Despite the awesomeness of the program here at UNCG, there is one thing that I would probably like to see a little bit more of, and that is instruction on marketing and library advocacy. I did learn about it when I went, on my interviews for the Museum of Art, and I also learned about it for my collections management class. But the truth is that I would like a little bit more. Interviews aren't quite enough, and marketing and library advocacy is more important than it's ever been before, because the nation's budget is getting tighter and tighter, and that is likely going to affect grants, which affects libraries. So maybe throwing a little bit more instruction somewhere into one or more of those classes would be very valuable. My time as an MLIS student has been rewarding and enjoyable. I've gotten a chance to feel very accomplished as I've worked a full-time job and gone to school part-time. And one semester I did go to school full-time while working my job, and it's taught me a lot about time management. And I've also enjoyed getting to know the different professionals in my industry as I've done interviews. Getting to know the faculty has been a lot of fun. They come from different scholastic backgrounds, and it's been enjoyable for me to see how their background has influenced their perspective on librarianship. And the fellow students are just as fun. I've enjoyed getting to know, how their backgrounds have caused them to want to be a librarian, and in some cases, some of these students have a job. They have managed to get a job even before they graduated. I've known students that have worked for the city of Charlotte. I've gotten a chance to know law librarians and community college librarians, and I've loved to hear about what made them successful in their field. And I've also learned a lot. However, I've just learned that it is just barely enough. Librarianship has changed a lot in the past 10 years, and it's not going to slow down, which is very good for me because that means that I will never be bored.